Every time there's a plane change, there's a color change. And so the values, all the light planes stay in the same family. There may be slight differences like here.
So our guest today is a very busy guy. Welcome to William A. Schneider. Bill, welcome.
Hi, glad to be here.
Yeah, well, and we're excited.
I will apologize in advance because at any moment we're going to have one of the lawn guys coming by on a lawnmower. I'm painting in my studio, which is my lanai here in Naples, Florida. So when you hear that, I'm not being eaten by a transformer or something. It's just the lawn people.
Okay. Well, you might hear chainsaws out my studio window too, so you just never know. Well, Bill, so what are the secrets to painting lips? Because I find that, I find eyes and noses and lips, of course, the main features that are so hard to do, but lips have a lot of dimension to them and a lot of shadow and form. So I'm kind of curious about this.
The main secret to all of those features is if you put an outline around them, you're already dead. You put an outline around the lips, it makes them hard and freezes them, whereas in real life, lips and eyes are always in motion. And so if we freeze them with an outline, they start to look very unnatural. It looks like a Stepford wife or an alien impersonating a human or a zombie or something. But whatever it is, it's not a good look. And so you avoid the outline, and particularly with lips, Harley Brown taught this to me. Never, 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 he said, put a line between the lips because it does the same thing, but even worse. And so how do you know where the lips go? I'll show that in the demo.
All right. Well, I'm excited. Let's get to this. This is great.
All right.
I made both of those mistakes. I was copying a painting. A neighbor has a beautiful portrait from Mexico, an old one, 100-year-old portrait. And I was copying this child, and, there was definitely a line between the lips. There was no outline, but definitely a line.
Yeah. And you can get to the effect of a line. It'll read as a line later on without being a line. And I'll show what I mean by that.
All right. Let's do this. It's exciting.
Okay. So what I'm going to do first is tone my surface. And the first question we always need to ask ourselves is, what is the temperature of the light? So I'm going to do this as if the model was under cool light. So I'm creating flesh tone.
The technique you're going to show will apply to really any painting medium. Is that right?
Yes. Oil and pastel inform each other. I tell my oil students, you should study pastel. And I tell my pastel students, you should study oil. And the reason is that each medium has certain strengths and certain weaknesses. And for example, with pastel, you can layer warm over cool colors, and you end up with microscopic particles next to each other, so it creates the same sort of vibration that you see in flesh. In oil, if you do that layering, they sort of muddy each other up. But the secret is, once you see it in pastel, then you know what it looks like, and you want to get that same effect in oil, which can be done, but it's just much more difficult. Also in pastel, all the strokes are automatically soft if you blend, which I do. And in oil, all the strokes are automatically hard, and you have to think to make them soft. So each medium reinforces the other. So anyway, what I'm doing here is setting up a flesh tone. And you might say, well, wait a minute, that person's not blue, but maybe kind of a cooler orangey color.
Already getting three-dimensionality on that. Just.
And all I've done is get some pastel on the surface. I'm using UART 240 grit grit paper.
240, UART 240 grip.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello,
I don't really
Argentina.
like that much. It's a little bit too gritty, but I won this in a competition, and so I use it up for these little demos. So this, I'm just setting up a base that I can put the lips in. So this is like the lower part of a jaw,
All right.
or the lower part of a face. And I'm going to make these larger than life size.
Well, that would be like my lips.
So if this is going to be the lip area, how do you draw the lips?
Are you
I'm
asking
sorry,
me?
somebody sending me a message. So I don't draw an outline. What I'm going to do is find the center point, the little shadow beneath this, and the little divot here. And my assistant just held up a message and said to let you know that Facebook isn't up.
Facebook is not up.
Facebook's not up, according to her. I just tried to log into it.
Well, it's up because we got people watching it. So she may not be seeing it on the right account. Everybody, if you're in the comments, I had hundreds of people in the comments now, so they're watching it on, a lot of them are on Facebook. So she may be looking at the wrong account.
Okay, good. That's good to know. So anyway, so all I've done to show the positioning of the lips is show the middle point, the shadow underneath, and the two corners. That's all you need. And then I'm going to start to put in some color for the lips. And notice, I don't have to draw inside the lines. And I do that intentionally because later on I'm going to carve back in with some of the background color. But this is enough to get it started. I guess one of the great lessons that I learned was when I finally gave myself permission to be really sloppy. And you can always tighten things up. It's easy to get tighter.
Yeah, but if you start out too tight, it's hard to get looser.
Absolutely. If you start out too tight, by the time you're done, it's way too tight. So there's basically the form of lips. Let me show this. You can think of the lips as three balls. There's two lobes in the bottom part of the lips, and then there's the center lobe there, and then there's the corners out here. And that, if you conceive of that volume, that I find that helpful.
I don't understand.
So what defines this? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't understand what you just said.
Okay, I'm adding three spheres, two on the bottom and one resting on top of it.
Yeah.
So this part of your lip is the top sphere. And then the two bottom ones are the two lobes on the lower lip.
Right.
And so, but dimensionally, that gives you the structure. And if you keep that in mind, it's helpful. So I can start to carve in and actually draw the lips using shadows. And I'm going to put a deep shadow underneath this lip. We're going to give her really luscious, pouting Hollywood lips. People spend a lot of money for those lips.
Botox.
So I'm starting to create the shadows that actually define the lip structure. And I'm kind of to the side so that I'm not in the way of the camera.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to paint to the side, isn't it?
But now I've got, in essence, I've sort of put a line there, but by doing it with strokes that go opposite the form, you know, the lips kind of go this way, but I'm painting them this way. It helps to break up that linearity and avoid that Stepford wife look that I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And I can kind of blend them. This is my prime painting tool, my little finger. I learned that from Harley Brown. He was my pastel instructor. And, you know, I've adapted his methodology. And I know some pastel teachers say, never blend, use little cross hatches. And I told that to Harley. When I first took a workshop from him, I took like 5 or 6 workshops from him. And the first one that I took, I said, well, at the American Academy of Art, they told me to use little cross hatches. And Harley said to me, really? When you look at your face in the mirror, do you have a lot of little cross hatches on your face, or is it smooth? And I said, well, it's smooth, and, you know, and he said, he didn't say anything, he just walked off laughing. But the point was made. This blending for flesh particularly looks more realistic, and it allows you to set up things so that when you do put some unblended strokes, they have more impact. I find anyway.
We have a video from Harley Brown. Rest in peace.
A video?
Yeah, we have one that Harley did.
Oh, good. People should buy that. It was fabulous. It's fabulous. So these lower lobes, if you look at them from the side, if you look at the structure of the lips from the side in profile, you've got the upper lip coming down and it goes into the middle. And then the lower lips come out and sort of flatten out, and then there's this divot from the side there. If the light is coming from this direction, this surface is lit, this is less lit, the vertical part, and then here you get shadow. And so what I'm doing is trying to replicate that in pastel.
You know, you just taught me something that I'd never really thought about, but I always struggle with that little shadow under the lip, and now it just makes sense. It's because of that divot.
Yes, yes. You know, they say paint what you see, but some of the time if you don't know exactly what it is you're seeing, you misperceive what in fact you did see. You know, that's why I always tell my students, you want something easy? Pick up investment banking.
Pick up a what?
Pick up investment banking.
Yeah, no thank you.
Or medicine, or engineering, rocket science. Those are all, what we do as artists is extraordinarily difficult. So what I'm trying to do is light up this top plane of these lips. And I haven't worried about the outside. I've still got all of this stuff. You know, this looks like somebody applied their lipstick on a really bad day, really hungover. I don't know, I think this looks good, but it'll get better. I'll carve into it. And I'm intentionally trying to break up that form. You know, we work on our paintings so close to them, and they look so much tighter when you're close up. But when you back up a few feet, all of that gets much looser. I'm sorry, I'm saying it the wrong way. They look much looser when you're up close, but when you back up, things look tighter. Just like when you shrink a picture down, it looks tighter.
Right.
And so I'm seeing all of this stuff, and I'm dying to fix up all of the areas that are just spreading out all over the place. But I can't do that. because it will screw up what I'm trying to do. So I can start to carve in to render the form of these lips. It's a little too greenish.
If you guys are enjoying this, put a comment in the comments section. Remember, you can win a Plein Air Magazine apron today for comments. And we'd love to have your questions. If you have any, I'll pass them on to Bill.
So I can use some of the outside color to carve in, but when I do that, I don't end up with really unpleasantly sharp edges. And I think beginning collectors assume that when artists start out, they're really loose, and then as they improve, they get tighter. It's actually the opposite. You know, beginning artists are all overly tight, and then with experience, we learn to loosen up a bit and become more suggestive.
The question is, how do the mouths of children differ?
The mouths of children tend to be more rounded and rosebud-like. They're smaller this way, and the lips tend to be fuller. So they're very soft, very round, and you get that Cupid's bow on the top a lot more. As we age, the lips tend to sort of shrink inwardly, shrink inward, and so they get thinner. And you know, the younger the people are, the more full and voluptuous, if you will, the lips are. Which is why the Botox business in Hollywood is so good. They're trying to use Botox and plumping injections to restore that look of youth.
You know, I don't think there's any amount of Botox that's going to do me any good.
You know, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. Not that this applies to you, because you're just a pup. But aging is not for the faint of heart.
You think?
Yeah. I'm trying to get a little more structure here without getting it too. Without getting too much structure. Well, I keep the illusion of shadow on the upper lip. I need more light on the lower lip. By the way, how are we doing on time?
Oh, we're doing great. You're going to have time to do a second demo. I've got one for you. We're going to challenge you.
Yeah. Then I better slow down. Now, one thing that's worth noting with lips, right in the center, it tends to get hotter. temperature-wise.
Yeah.
And so I'm putting some really pure red into that center area to push it back in. And in Richard Schmidt's book, Alla Prima, he talks about, the temperature of the light. And he says, cool light generates warm shadows, and warm light generates cool shadows. And that's true. And he also said, but the deepest recesses, regardless of the temperature of the light, are virtually always hot. And he said that he saw a deep recess that was not hot once, but he was standing on the edge of a glacier looking down into a crevasse, and he saw a cool, deep, dark. I personally have never seen one, because I haven't stood on the edge of a glacier. But the deepest recesses, whether it's in landscape or still life or figures or portraits or whatever, are virtually always hot. And so if you want to make something look like it's going back in, get a deep, dark red and push it into that area and it'll recede.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool.
So like under a tree, you have, in bright, warm Florida sunshine, and you've got kind of a cooler shadow, but the deep recess under that tree will be hot. Dan Gerhardt's pointed that out to me one time. So I'm trying to lighten up this upper plane here a little bit. So that's starting to work. Well, it doesn't take much. Or to be more exact, I don't like much. A lot of the ateliers are focusing on the training that they had at the École de Beaux-Arts in Paris, and seeing the Barguet plates and so on. So you get tremendous accuracy in drawing and accuracy in values, but they don't. They sort of don't pay attention to what came after that. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the art made in the late 1800s, 1890, 1880, they started to do a lot with the form sort of dissolving, particularly people like Nikolai Feshin. It was almost, I think, a game for him to see how much he could fragment the form and still have it read. And so, a lot of times, things that have names, lips, eyes, nose, all of those things, he would really fragment. And then areas that don't have names, like what do you call this flesh on the side of your cheek? Who knows? He would let that be very flat and rounded, even use a palette knife. But you'd get the contrast. What I'm doing now, by the way, as I'm talking, I'm taking this kind of olivey green to show where the form is starting to roll into this area where the lip goes under.
That's kind of a David LaFell trick, isn't it?
Maybe, I don't know.
Well, that's one thing David taught me is that he uses, oftentimes it's an olive green, kind of a background color where things start to recede or change. You probably got it from wherever you got it from.
Well, you see that, I encourage people to copy masterworks. To this day, at least once a month, I copy a masterwork. Because if you copy Sargent or Zorn or Feshin or Gerhardt's or Carolyn Anderson or, you name it, any master, past or present, they've already solved the problems.
Right.
And then all you have to do is reverse engineer it by.
Well, you can fill your house with beautiful masterworks.
Yeah, that's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. My wife has me has instructed me not to buy any more paintings or trade for more paintings. I
Yeah.
trade
Well,
for
tell
more
her
paintings.
tell her that I gave you permission.
Okay. I'll say I'm under orders from Eric. Sorry. You know, I was at an exhibit in Santa Fe. Is it Santa Fe? Yes. And it was during the recession of 2007, 2008. And somebody had a Sergei Bongard painting on consignment. And, you know, they said, what are you asking for this? And they threw out a huge number. And I said, well, that's way too much. I could maybe do, and I threw out a really low number. And she said, well, call the owner. And so she called the owner and we came back and negotiated. And so they were willing to sell this thing to me for like a third of what
Oh,
it's
nice.
probably really worth. And I made my mistake. I took a photo of it and I sent it to my bride and said, I'm thinking of buying this. What do you think? And she said, don't you dare buy that. That's the most god-awful thing. Why do you want that? And so I learned better to beg forgiveness than ask permission. And that's now been my motto when it comes to buying artwork.
Yeah, I bought it. I bought an Emil Groupie painting this summer from his daughter, and I wasn't sure how I was going to break that news, so it just kind of hung in my office for a couple of weeks. And my wife came in and said, "Oh, that's a nice painting," and that was a good thing. We should hang that in the house. Where'd you get that? And then I told her, and then she, how much did you pay for it? And then I told her, and then it was a kind of an ugly moment.
Well, you know what? Inflation last year was 6.4%. So your paintings have gone up 6.4% because the hard assets go up with the declining dollar.
Yeah, and some are saying the inflation rate now is even higher.
Yeah. Well, if you look at oil has doubled over the past year. A lot of costs have really gone up. And artwork holds its value, or to be more exact, as the dollar depreciates, the artwork retains the same purchasing power.
Yeah.
Whereas your bank account is losing money.
That's
so
beautiful,
what I'm doing
Bill.
here, I should probably talk about the painting. As the lips roll in, there's this little area right here that kind of flattens out, and it's really the color of the flesh that's around it, but it bleeds right into the lips, and it gives it a more natural look. And
so there's no outline, no outline.
And it's disguised because you ladies have learned to put color on your lips. It goes back to caveman times. Grog would go out and kill the mastodon, and then some of the cave women discovered that if they put dark outlines around their eyes and red stuff on their lips, Grog would come back and give them a bigger haunch of the mastodon. And so that's carried through to modern times. That's my theory. I'm sticking to it. But,
so if you have a model and if the model is heavily made up, do you want them to be made up the way they would be, or do you try to get the natural look?
I try to get a more natural look. I do tell them, lipstick and mascara are okay. I definitely do not want them putting, powder
foundation,
and makeup on the surface because it destroys the translucence of the skin. Skin, naturally, you see three levels. Skin is transparent or translucent. And so if somebody gets killed, they'll slice off parts of the skin and put it on a microscope and shine a light right through it to examine it. So you can see through the skin to what's underneath. So areas that have more capillaries might be pinker, and areas that have more veins, like around the eyes, might be a little purpler or bluer. And so you see through the skin, but you also see the color of the skin itself. And that's the pigment melanin, which is kind of a sepia color. And the more of that pigment you have, the darker you are.
Yep.
So there are no white people, there are no black people. They're just different shades of this brownish melanin color. And then the third level is you see whatever light is hitting bouncing right back, the reflection, the highlights. And so if you've got makeup on, you destroy the translucence. You don't see into the skin, so it ends up, you have to make up too much.
And the trick you did in the beginning, that really makes the skin translucent. That's for sure.
So, so I can keep picking at this, but I think it's getting the effect of flesh in the light, and part of it is the highlight. And there's usually some highlight right here at the top of the philtrum. There might be a little highlight right here where it flattens out. Tends to be a little bit of a sharper edge right there. And I'm just doing this out of my head, so if I had a model here, it would be less generalized, but this at least is giving some of the effect.
Well, I would have never guessed that's how you did lips. It was fabulous.
Well, thank you.
Hope you guys are enjoying it. If you are, put a comment in. Remember, there's a gift for comments. If you have we pick you can win a Plein Air Magazine apron today. Tell us where you're from. That's always helpful.
Where I'm from?
No, I know where you're from. You're from Mars.
I am from Mars. My wife is from Venus. There's a book about that.
Now, what about the little shadow that goes in the fulcrum typically? That depends, I suppose. It's obviously
right
depends on, the little triangular.
Yeah, often that is not a shadow. It's in the light, and it's really more of a half-tonish thing, and so it's better to show that with temperature rather than with actual value.
Ah.
You know, in terms of depicting, sorry, I'm trying to find the right pastel. In terms of depicting three-dimensionality, the basic tool to do that is value. All the dark values like this show where there's an undercut, and the light values show where things are facing the light. And the part that gets confusing is the halftone. So you got a halftone, like often on the side of the nose or on the side of a cheek or something. And so when I started out, I would make that the value of the shadow, and it destroyed the form. You've got to keep the two of them separate. It's like you're having a dinner party, and you've got Republicans and Democrats. Do not put them interspaced, Republican, Democrat, because you're going to have people fighting by the end of the dinner. Better to keep them separated.
Hello, Indonesia.
It's very clear. I'm sorry, what?
Oh, I just said hello, Indonesia.
Oh, hello, Indonesia.
A lot of Canada. I saw India. I saw Italy. It's nice to have people say where they're from. All right. Well, that's looking good. So you did put a little darker value in there.
Yeah, I did. And Harley Brown, again, asked me a question when he took the workshops. He had a handout and it said, how many values in the face? And he asked it 3 times. How many values in the face? How many values in the face? And his answer was there are 2. There's light and there's shadow. And what he really meant, I think, is that there's 2 families. There's the light family and the shadow family. And you can't let the values cross. So the light needs to be clearly one beast, and the shadow needs to be a separate beast, so that it keeps the illusion of that form. And the more you can do with color and temperature. See, the problem is, we can only perceive maybe 13 or 14 value jumps. So if you have a value scale, a 20 value scale, it goes from black to white, and you divide it into 20 equal amounts, I defy you to tell the difference between value number 16 and value number 17.
Yeah, right.
We can't do it. We run out of value very quickly. But we can perceive something like 2 million different colors. And so if you use the color to show the form changing, every time there's a plane change, there's a color change. And so the values say all the light planes stay in the same family. There may be slight differences like here, but this is nowhere close to this shadow color or shadow value. And so if you keep the values simple and put your nuance into the color, that's what the more experienced artists learn to do. And the beginning artists do it exactly the opposite way. They tend to simplify the colors, like they'll mix up one color for the flesh and it's the same color on the forehead as is on the nose, as is on the chin. And so they've simplified the color, and then they try to put the nuance in by having these little tiny value increments, and you can't do it. As soon as you get back 10 feet, you can't tell the difference in the increments, and it doesn't hold together. So it's better to simplify the values and show the nuance with color.
I think it was Nelson Shanks who once told me that there were 3 bands of color in a portrait.
Yep, I would agree with that.
So, so it was, what was it? Yellow, red, and green, I think, right?
Yeah, it's kind of an ivory color because the bone in the forehead is closer to the surface, and so that's kind of showing through. And so, and you get more capillaries across the nose and the cheeks. Basically, I think we've evolved that during the ice ages to prevent our nose and cheeks freezing. And so those tend to be pinker. And then you get down towards the bottom, as the head is kind of egg-shaped. And so as you go underneath, it's starting to roll into the shadow. And so as forms change direction, they start to pick up the temperature that they're going towards, if that makes sense. So, so things on this side will start to roll into more of the olivey color at the bottom, and then they get into the shadow, which gets hot again. Here I could put a shadow under this chin.
Yeah.
And then I could start to show that form rolling up, because it's not a sharp edge. This girl is not carved out of a wooden block. It's kind of rolling into that. So if I take that more olivey color, it's warmer than this, but cooler than this. So it's sort of a transition temperature as well as color, but it's showing that the form is a rounded form rather than a form that's comes to a sharp point like it was carved out of wood, like I said.
Yeah.
And then the chin tends to have a little more pinkish color in it too. Maybe not that much.
You just make this look so easy.
I can cool that off again. By showing where the light is starting to hit more on the top. And I'm doing that, by the way, with just a blue, light value blue. By the way, can I do a quick commercial?
Yeah.
The set I'm using here is the William Schneider 80-stick portrait and figure pastel set. It's Richardson hand roll pastels. You can get that a lot of different places. I think Judson's Art Outfitters have the lowest price.
I'll ask Christina to put a link to that in the comments section.
Awesome.
Richardson pastels, William A. Schneider kit.
Yeah,
I need one of those. I need that, Bill. I guess I need to. Need to call Jack Richardson. All right. Well, I think you've really given us a lot to think about here today, and what a great challenge. I will show you real quickly. I'm going to show you an image of a little girl that I'm working on. Can you see that?
Yes.
So this is a little Mexican girl, and it's a portrait of a girl and her father, or it might be a little boy. That's really hard to tell. But where I was really struggling with the lips is when we went into the shadow and the angle, and how far do you? You've got the foreshortening issue there.
Yes, you do. And one thing about mouths and lips, I'm glad you mentioned that. The radius of the arch of the teeth is smaller than the radius of the arch of your cheekbones. And what that means is, as the head rotates, the mouth foreshortens faster than the cheekbones.
Ah.
And so that far corner of the mouth will recede and get smaller much faster than the cheek does. And that tends to throw us as well. That's why I say, if you want something easy, pick up rocket science.
Pick up rocket science.
What we do. As artists, I managed in my intermediate career between being a rock musician and an artist. In the middle, I ran a pension consulting company, and we managed billions and billions of dollars for institutions. And everything I needed to know about that, I learned in the first 3 years. And that was it. There was nothing new. Art, it never ends. Every hill you go over, you say, now I've arrived. Oh, wait a minute, there's another hill. Oh, now I understand values. Oh, now there's temperature. Oh, now I understand temperature. Oh, now there's design. Oh, it never ends. And I'm reminded of, Rembrandt on his deathbed said something to the effect of, I have sinned against God and man because I failed to live up to the full potential that I could have. Something to that effect. And there's another artist, also on his deathbed in his 80s or 90s, who said, so soon I was just starting to understand. And it's really true. It never ends. That's what makes it so interesting.
And what I love is that you're sharing. I mean, you have all these videos that you've done with us and with Lilith over the years, sharing. Every time you learn something new, it seems like you're sharing it and coming up with a lot of different products. And so that's really helpful. So we put a link to those in the comments if anybody's interested in those. I'm sure they will be.
Great.
Bill, thank you so much for teaching us about lips. You taught me things that I've been struggling with, and I think we all have. So thank you for doing that today.
Glad to do it. Glad to be here.
And we'll also post your website so people can find out about your workshops, and we will post where to get your pastel sets.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bill.